The woman in the dust. The wind was a living thing that afternoon, a dry, hungry beast sweeping across the plains, lifting the red dust of Arizona territory into trembling waves. The sun hung low, wide, and merciless, baking the land until even the rocks seemed to sweat. A lone rider moved through that emptiness. His horse, a scarred bay with one torn ear, trudged along the cracked earth. The man on its back wore a sweat-darkened hat, a faded duster, and a revolver that gleamed like a cold secret on his hip. His name was Elias Ward, though folks in town called him the Lone Rancher. He lived 20 miles west of nowhere, ran a stretch of half-dead land that hadn't seen rain in 2 seasons, and spoke less than he slept, which wasn't much. He wasn't headed anywhere in particular that day. Maybe toward the creek that still carried a trickle of water, maybe towards silence itself. But the sight that stopped him wasn't something a man could ride past. Down in a dry gully, he saw something pale, cloth, torn and fluttering weakly in the wind. His hand went to his gun out of habit, eyes narrowing. Then he saw the figure beneath it. A woman. She was lying on her side, half buried in the dust. Her hair, once golden, was matted with sand. Her dress was ripped to ribbons, her face streaked with blood and dirt. Her hands were bound with rawhide rope. Elias swung off his horse and dropped to one knee beside her. Her breath was faint, lips cracked open in a whisper he couldn't quite hear. "Ma'am," he said, voice low but steady. "You hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. She tried to move, but pain seized her body. He pulled his canteen loose and tilted it toward her mouth. "Slow now. Just a sip." She drank like a dying deer at a stream, small, desperate gulps that trembled down her throat. When she looked at him, her eyes were the color of frost melting on iron. Who are you?" she rasped. "Name's Ward. Elias Ward." Why'd you stop?" He glanced around. No wagon, no horse, no sign of anyone but the wind. "Because you're still breathing. That's reason enough." He cut the rope from her wrists with his knife. She winced, the skin beneath raw and bruised. "Who did this?" he asked quietly. Her answer came slow, broken between shallow breaths. "My in-laws. They said I shamed their family. My husband's gone 2 years in the war, never wrote back. His brothers, they wanted me out. Said I had no right to his land." Elias' jaw hardened. "So they left you here to die." She nodded faintly. "Took the horse, the wagon, everything. Said no one would come this way." Elias stood, scanning the horizon. He saw wagon tracks, faint but fresh, leading west. His hand brushed his revolver again. When he looked back down, she was staring at him with a strange mixture of fear and hope. "What are you going to do?" she asked. He lifted her gently, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. "You're coming with me." The bay horse carried them slow through the fading light. The woman leaned weakly against him, half conscious, the desert swallowing her shivers. "Got a name?" he asked after a while. "Clara," she murmured. "Clara Whitlock." Elias nodded. "You married into the Whitlocks up by Red Mesa?" She blinked, surprised. "You know them?" "Know of them. Hard men. Harder women. They've run cattle off my range twice." Her lips trembled. "Then you should have left me there." He looked down at her, a woman beaten, abandoned, and still apologizing. "No," he said simply. "I shouldn't have." By the time they reached the small ranch Elias called home, night had swallowed the desert. The stars were sharp, cold things above the mesa. The cabin stood alone on a rise, rough-hewn logs, a porch barely hanging on, and a corral with one tired mule. Inside, it smelled of old wood and black coffee. He laid her on his bed, fetched water from the barrel, and set about cleaning her wounds with quiet precision. He didn't speak, didn't look too long at her torn dress or the bruises that painted her shoulders. He just worked, slow, steady, respectful. When he was done, he covered her with a wool blanket and lit the stove. "You'll live," he said finally. Clara watched him from under the blanket, her eyes flickering in the dim lamplight. "Why were you helping me, Mr. Ward? You don't even know me." He poured 2 cups of coffee, though he only drank his own. "Maybe I don't have to." She looked away, voice small. "They'll come for me. Then they'll find a man between you and the door." For the first time in a long while, Elias didn't sleep that night. He sat on the porch, rifle across his knees, eyes on the horizon. Coyotes howled far off. The wind carried whispers that felt too much like memory. He'd once had a wife, years ago, Martha, sweet as morning light. Fever took her and their unborn child in the same week. Since then, Elias had spoken little and trusted less. But something in the way Clara had looked at him, not with love, not yet, but with a kind of fragile belief, made something shift deep inside him. When dawn bled into the world, painting the sky with fire, he found Clara standing weakly by the doorway. "You shouldn't be up," he said. "I can't sleep," she replied. "Every time I close my eyes, I see their faces." He walked over, handed her a cup of warm water. "You'll stop seeing him one day." "Do you?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer. Over the next few days, she began to regain her strength. She helped mend fences, fed the animals, and cooked what little food the place offered. She moved with the careful grace of someone trying not to break. And Elias, though silent, began to find himself watching her, the way she'd pause to listen to the wind or hum a song half-remembered from childhood. One evening, as they sat by the fire, she said, "You could turn me in, you know, to the sheriff. Say I trespassed." He looked up from cleaning his gun. "Wouldn't make much sense, would it? You didn't do nothing wrong." They'd say otherwise. Then let him talk. Her eyes softened. "You really don't care what folks say?" He met her gaze. "If I did, I wouldn't be living out here." 3 days later, they saw smoke on the horizon, dark, rising fast. Elias knew the look of it. Wagon smoke. He stood from the porch, eyes narrowing. "They're coming." Clara froze. "My in-laws." He nodded once. 2, maybe 3 riders. "I'll find out what they want." He saddled his horse, strapped on his rifle, and turned to her before mounting. "Whatever happens," he said, "you stay inside." She grabbed his sleeve. "Elias, please don't kill them." His jaw tightened. "I'll try not to." Then he rode out, into the red dusk, into the gathering storm of men and old debts. The Whitlocks came just as the sun died behind the mesa. 3 riders, dust-streaked, cruel-faced, their laughter as dry as the land. Elias stopped 50 yards away. "Ward," the eldest called out, a scar across his cheek. "Ain't your business what happens to our kin. Hand her over." Elias didn't move. "You left her to die. She brought shame to our name." The man spat. "You think you can fix that?" Elias's hand hovered near his holster. "I think I can make sure you don't do it again." The Whitlocks shifted in their saddles. One laughed. "You alone, Ward? You think you can stand against 3 men?" Elias tilted his hat down, eyes cold. "I've stood against worse for less." The air went still. Hands hovered over guns. The desert held its breath. Then thunder cracked, not from the sky, but from steel. When it was over, the dust settled on 2 empty saddles. The 3rd horse galloped off into the darkness. Elias sat motionless for a long while, smoke rising from his revolver. He turned back toward the ranch. Clara was standing in the doorway, tears shining in her eyes. He dismounted slowly, holstering his gun. "Told you to stay inside." She ran to him, gripping his arm. "You could have been killed. Wouldn't be the first time." She looked up at him, at the man who'd walked through fire for a woman he barely knew. Her voice broke. "Why?" He looked out toward the horizon, where the last of the light faded into night. "Because no one deserves to be left behind." That night, as the wind howled and the stars burned above, Clara sat by the fire, her eyes on the man who'd saved her. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew this. She wasn't alone anymore. And somewhere deep in his silence, Elias Ward knew it too. He just didn't say it out loud. Blood and rain on Red Mesa. Morning came slow and colorless, the kind of dawn where even the sun seemed too tired to rise. Elias Ward was already awake, saddlebag open on the porch, checking his cartridges one by one. Clara stepped outside, shawl tight around her shoulders. Her eyes were heavy with sleepless worry. "They won't stop, will they?" she asked quietly. Elias looked up. "Men like that don't stop till they're buried." He strapped his rifle and cinched the saddle. "One of them got away last night. He'll ride to Red Mesa, bring back more." Clara's hands trembled. "Then we should run." He shook his head. "They track us. I know this land better than they do. And if it comes to fighting, I'd rather face him here than out in the open." She swallowed, voice barely a whisper. "You'll get yourself killed for me." Elias looked at her for a long time. "No, ma'am. I'll get myself killed for what's right." There's a difference. By noon, the heat had risen like a curse. Elias spent the morning boarding the windows, digging shallow trenches around the porch, and checking the rifle sights. Clara helped where she could, though her hands were raw and blistered from work she wasn't used to. Every now and then, she'd stop to glance at the horizon, the vast, trembling line where sky met earth, as if expecting those dark figures to appear at any moment. When the wind shifted east, Elias paused, sniffed the air. "Storm coming," he muttered. "Rain?" she asked hopefully. "Maybe, but the kind that don't wash things clean." By dusk, thunder rolled low over the mesa. The sky bruised purple and gray. Elias had the lanterns dimmed and the horses tied tight in the barn. He moved like a man who'd fought this war before, slow, sure, and ready to pay the cost. Clara sat near the stove, clutching a small revolver he'd handed her earlier. "I don't know if I can use it," she admitted. "You point it where your fear is," Elias said. "Then you squeeze till it's gone." She looked at him, this quiet, worn man with eyes like the edge of a storm, and something inside her shifted. "You've done this before, haven't you?" He nodded once or twice. During the war, then again when men tried to hack what wasn't theirs. "Out here, law don't reach far enough." "Then why do you stay?" He turned toward the window. "Because someone's got to." The first rider came after sundown, a dark blur against the lightning-lit plain. Then another, and another. 5 riders this time. The Whitlocks had brought friends. Elias chambered around and blew out the lantern. "Stay low," he said. Clara crouched behind the table, heart thundering as hooves pounded closer. Voices carried through the rain. "Ward, you got something belongs to us." Elias stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. Rain streaked across his hat brim. "She don't belong to anyone," he called back. A voice laughed. "Harmeen, you think you can hide her forever? She's a Whitlock widow. She's ours by law." Elias didn't move. "Then your law's worth less than dust. Last chance, Ward." Lightning cracked, white and furious. Elias' rifle barked once, and the lead rider toppled from his horse. The storm broke. Gunfire tore through the rain, muzzle flashes lighting the night like brief, terrible suns. Bullets shattered wood and glass. The cabin shook. Clara screamed once, then bit it back, gripping the revolver with shaking hands. Elias fired steady, methodical, each shot measured, deliberate. He dropped one man at the corral, another near the barn. But there was still more, shouting curses as they spread out. Then a crash. One man kicked the back door open, roaring into the house with a shotgun. Clara didn't think. She turned, eyes wide, and pulled the trigger. The gun kicked hard, smoke filling the air. The man fell, crashing into the stove. Her hands shook uncontrollably, the revolver clattering to the floor. Elias burst in a second later. One glance told him everything. "You did what you had to," he said softly, picking the gun back up and pressing it into her palm. "Now keep doing it till we're done." Outside, thunder drowned the world. Elias moved through the mud, reloading as he went, eyes scanning the flashes of light for movement. A shadow lunged from behind a rain barrel. He swung the rifle like a club, sending the man sprawling. Another came from the side, knife glinting. Elias fired point blank, and the man dropped without a sound. The smell of gunpowder mixed with wet earth. The storm howled. Then, from the darkness, a voice shouted. The eldest Whitlock, rage cutting through the rain. "Ward, you're a dead man. She's coming back with us, one way or another." Elias raised his rifle. "Not while I'm breathing." The answer came in gunfire. Both men fired near simultaneously. The thunder swallowed the shots. When the flash cleared, Whitlock was down, clutching his chest, staring up at the black sky in disbelief. Elias staggered back, hit in the shoulder. He dropped to one knee, teeth clenched against the pain. Clara's scream echoed through the rain. She ran from the doorway, kneeling beside him. "You're hurt." "Not bad," he managed, blood running down his arm. "Get back inside. I'm not leaving you." He tried to push her away, but his strength faltered. And then, silence. Only the rain, falling steady now. The fight was over. By dawn, the storm had passed. The land smelled clean for the first time in months. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, rising into a calm, blue sky. Elias sat on the porch, shoulder-bandaged, coffee cup in hand. Clara stood beside him, watching the light creep across the hills. "They won't be back," he said quietly. "No," she agreed. "They won't." He looked at her, at the woman who'd faced her nightmares and survived. "You got a choice now, Clara. You can go east, start over. Sheriff will take your statement, get you protection." She turned to him, eyes steady. "And what about you?" "I'll stay. This land's got too many ghosts for most folks, but it still needs tending to." She smiled faintly. "You could use help." Elias hesitated. "Ain't much pay in it." "Wasn't a skin for pay," she said softly. "I was a skin if you wanted company." He looked out over the plains, the sun spilling gold across the mesa, the earth steaming from last night's rain. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded once. "Reckon I wouldn't mind that." Weeks passed. The ranch began to change. Fences mended, the well cleared, wildflowers sprouting after the storm. Clara learned to ride, to rope, to mend saddles. And Elias, though still quiet, began to talk more about the war, about Martha, about the years the desert had taken from him. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Clara stood beside him on the porch. "You ever think about leaving this place?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Used to, but the land's got a way of holding on to a man. You plant roots long enough, they start digging into you." She looked out across the horizon, where the light bled into shadow. "It's strange," she said. "All my life, I thought home was walls and people and names. But maybe it's just where someone decides you matter." Elias turned toward her. "You matter, Clara. You always did. Just took the right storm to show it." She met his gaze, and for the first time, neither looked away. That night, the desert was quiet. No gunfire, no ghosts, no voices from the past. Just wind through the grass, and the soft creak of wood as the house settled into peace. Inside, the fire burned low. Clara rested near it, a book in her hands. Elias sat across from her, mending a bridle, the faint smile never leaving his face. Outside, rain began to fall again, gentle this time, kind. It drummed softly on the roof, washing the blood from Red Mesa, leaving only the memory of what had been lost and found. Weeks turned to months. Travelers passing through spoke of a lone rancher and the woman he'd saved from death itself. A quiet pair who ran cattle on a patch of desert that had bloomed green again. They said the man spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight, like thunder before rain. They said the woman smiled often, though her eyes still carried storms. And sometimes, at dusk, when the wind swept low and the sky burned gold, a traveler might hear her voice through the open door, soft but certain. "You're coming with me," Elias warned. And the man's answer, deep and sure, "I already did."